Good day again, uh, grade 8 learners, and welcome back to yet another video of economics, management, economics, and as I say, please don't mind the spelling economics and management science, grade 8, term 3 work, and we are still focusing on the forms of ownership. The forms of ownership, yes, that's the topic. We're focusing on the forms of ownership, and this will be part two from the first part that we did of part two. Remember, we were talking about um, the types of ownership. Firstly, we did sole trader, which is sole proprietor, and then we did partnership. If you go back to our videos, you'll find part one, which is sole trader and partnership, and now we'll be focusing on the other forms of ownership. And then the third one will be, this will be our third one, which is private company. When you want to start a private company as an entrepreneur. All right, so without wasting any further time, let's get into it. So what is a private company? So as it is defined there, it's defined as a private company written as PTY Limited. Don't forget these acronyms. So PTY standing for proprietary. PTY in brackets is for proprietary, and then LTD standing for limited. So we will go, or we'll delve deep into these particular acronyms. But for now, let's focus on the definition of what a private company is. So a private company, written as PTY Ltd, which is proprietary limited, is a type of business ownership where the business is registered as a separate legal entity. Remember, we were talking about a non-separate and separate legal entity. So in this case, it's a separate legal entity, meaning the owner and the business are not viable for the owner and business are separated when it comes to legal affairs. All right. When it comes to legal affairs, the business and the owner or owners, they are separated. So it's a separate legal entity, and it is privately owned by one or more shareholders. So what you need to take into consideration is that it's owned by what? By one or more shareholders, not partners, not members, but shareholders. This is very important. So in that particular company, each member each member has shares. Hence, they are called shareholders. Each member has shares. All right. Each member has shares. So it is a business that is registered as a separate legal entity, and it is privately owned by one or more shareholders, not partners, not members, not colleagues, but by shareholders. So usually in a private company, you'll find family members, friends, or business partners. So it's owned by very close people. So people who usually know each other. All right. So that's the first definition of what a private company is. So moving along, in entrepreneurship, when an entrepreneur wants to grow their business but also protect themselves from personal risk, what does this mean? It means that now, let's say, so I want you to take this sentence, all right? I want you to take this sentence. In an entrepreneurship, when an entrepreneur wants to grow the business, so we want to upscale our business, right? But we don't want to lose our own money. We don't want to lose our personal risk. We don't want to lose our own money. So here, let's say, uh, business. Okay, let's use Mduduzi. Bakery. Remember Mduduzi's Bakery. Okay. Let's say Mdudu's Bakery is a what? A private company. All right. However, now, uh, for now, the business uh, serves only 100 customers, but we want to grow. Want to We want to grow what? The business. So what do we do? What do we do? We ask for investments. But remember, this money might come back to Mdudu's. So what happens? As a private company, it protects you now. When an entrepreneur wants to grow their business but also protect themselves from business, they may choose to register. So what does it mean is that they will be legally separated from the business. So you want to grow the business and ask for investment or loans. Ask for investment rather or loans. So this loan will be part of the business. All right. So this loan that the business asks for a loan, it will be part of the business. But because now you read here, because a private company is a legally separated entity, legally separated, it means that the loan will be part of the business but won't be part of the owner, won't be part of the owner. Why? Legally separated entity. Legally separated. Separated what? Entity. It's a legally separated entity. So the business and the owner are apart. They are separated. All right? I want you to understand this. So Mdu's Bakery is a private company. It serves 100 customers, but we want to grow so that it can serve 500 customers. What does the business do? The business asks for investments or loans. All right? The business asks for investments or loans. So the loan is part of the business. The loans are part of the business, but they won't be part of the owners. Why? So this loan is part of the business, but not the owners. Why? Because it's a legally separated entity. So the loan is separated from the owners. All right. So we'll go back to the definition so that you can understand. So, entrepreneurship, when an entrepreneur wants to grow, upscale their business, but also protect themselves from personal risk or loans, they may choose to register a private company, right? Choose to register a private. This means that the business is legally separated from the owner. So the owner won't be liable for the business's debts. And the owners have limited liabilities. We spoke unlimited and limited. If you go back to the previous videos, you learn more about what is limited and what is unlimited liabilities. We explain it further and better then, right? So they can only lose money they invested in the company, but not their personal belongings like cars or houses. The only money that they will lose is the money in the company. All right? So as we move along, a private company can have up to 1 to 50 what shareholders. Again, as I said, as we go back here, shareholders, right? Not members, not partners, not it's shareholders. So here a private company can have up to 1 to 50 shareholders, and its shares cannot be sold to the public, meaning it's not a listed company. This means that shares cannot be sold when the shares of the company cannot be sold to the public, shares not sold. What it means is that it is not a listed company. Where do you list companies? Where do you list companies? I'm waiting for your answer. Where? Yes, correct. At the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, right? So that's where you list a company, but a private company is not listed. So its shares cannot be sold to the what? To the public. This form of ownership allows entrepreneurs to raise more capital than a sole trader partnership while keeping control within a trusted group. Why can they raise more capital? Because they are a lot of, remember, partnership, it's only up to 20 partners. Sole trader is only one partner. Remember that? So sole trader is only one partner or one member or the only owner in a company. And then partnership, it's from 1 to 20. Now, in a private company, you can have 1 to 50. But again, you can keep control within that particular trusted group of what? Of family members, friends, or business partners without listing. Without listing. Again, we go back to what? To shares not sold without listing the company to the what? To the public. All right. And then the last definition, private companies are managed by directors. So let me, okay. So let's divert into it. So in a private company, you have what? One, shareholders. These are practically the owners of the company, but they do not run or manage. Who runs or manages? So let's go here. So private companies are managed by directors. They manage what? The funds. They manage what? The funds, the debts. So these may be CEOs or not CEOs. So managers of the company. So these the shareholders just are the people who just put in money in the business, right? Managers of the company are what? Are your directors. So these ones, they supply the money. These ones, they manage the money provided by the shareholders. All right. So private companies are managed by what? By your directors who are chosen by the what? By the shareholders. So in the private company, number one, you have your shareholders. Number two, you'll have the people who manage the funds in a private company, which are your directors. All right. And with these, they must make sure that they follow certain legal rules. So the private company must be registered by the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, the CIPC, in keeping financial records. So who is responsible for all these matters? The directors now. The directors are responsible for registering the company, responsible for registrations and keeping financial records. All right, keeping financial records. So this job is for the directors, registering with the CIPC and keeping financial records. So the shareholders will hire these people, will hire the directors to do these jobs. All right. So that's the whole definition of what? Of a private company. All right. Remember the PTY Limited. So let's go into it and explain what PTY Ltd stands for. Right. So number one here we have it. The PTY in the definition. The PTY. So for instance, the name will be. Okay. Let's just do this. Mduduzi Bakery. And how do you know it's a private company? It will have your PTY Ltd. That shows this is a private company. So proprietary limited. So proprietary means privately owned. Remember, it's not listed. It's not listed to the public. Public. It's owned by what? By a small. trusted group. So propriety, it means privately owned. The company shares are not available to the public. It means that the private or the business or company cannot sell their shares, right? Can not sell their, they cannot sell their shares to the public. In a case whereby the company is in debt and they need money, they are not allowed to sell their shares so they can gather capital to rejuvenate the company, right? So yes, the company shares are not available to the company. They are not listed, right? Only selected people can own shares. Only selected people within that small group of people, that small trusted group, which might be your family, your friends, or your partners. You can sell these shares to these small group of people, but you cannot sell it to the public. This is what the PTY, right? The PTY in the private company stands for proprietary. It means it's privately owned. And then when we go to the LTD, it means limited. It means limited. Limited what? Limited liability. The owners are not personally responsible for the company's debts. Remember, if you go previously here, uh, all right, here, okay, it's more, this one is a legal, okay, there it is. Owner and business are separated, separated. So this is the whole idea that you must get from limited, separated. We did it in the previous videos. You can go back and check those videos and you see that we did it. Limited means separated from, separated from. So limit, the owners are not personally responsible, meaning that you cannot take something of an owner or a shareholder if the company happens to be in debt. If the company is in debt, you cannot go to the owners and take something. So the business will then have to fend or defend for itself. They can only lose their money that they invested in the company. So let's say, okay, let's put it in practical example, right? Let's do this. Let's say Ndu's Bakery Pty Ltd. All right, Ndu's Bakery Pty Ltd. There are 15 shareholders, right? So I want you to be with me here, right? There are 15 shareholders, and then each shareholder invested 100,000. Each shareholder invested 100,000. It happens that the company owes um the company owes 1 million in taxation. 1 million in taxation. The company, not the shareholders, but the company. It owes 1 million in taxation. Remember, the shareholders invested how many? How much between them? 100,000. How much is that? So you do this. It's 15 shareholders times 100,000 each, right? I'll let you do the calculation. How much is it? How much? How much? Yes, you guessed it. It's 1 million. Yes. Okay. Let's rather do this. Let's say, uh, okay, it's fine. Yes, the company still owes 1 million. So let's do this. The company owes 2, 2 million, 2 million. Guys, don't be lost. I'll be with you. I'm here. I'm here. I'm here for you. Let's go back and start again. I want you to understand what limited liability stands for or what it is. Limited, it's separated from, right? So Mudu's Bakery has 15 shareholders. They all invested 100,000 each, which makes up to 1.5 million of the what of the company. Now the company all in all has 1,500,000. All right? This is the money for the company that was invested by the shareholders. All right, the money that was invested by the shareholders. But now it happens that the company, not the shareholders, but the company owes 2 million in taxation too. So now if you look at here, the company has 1.5 million, but it owes 2 million, right? So if we minus the debt to the company uh, income or the company profit, if you minus the debt, so the company, it's 2 million of the debt minus 1.5 million of the company value. This is the company value. So now it happens that no, the company still owes 500,000. Why? Because they didn't pay all the 2 million. The company didn't pay the 2 million that it now it still owes 500,000. Do you understand now? They're still owing 500,000. But now they cannot, or rather the bank cannot now go to the shareholders and take their personal belongings. Because why? It is a limited liability. It is separated. These shareholders are not connected to the company. So this 500 will still be owed until it will still be owed until the company can raise. It will still be owed until the company raises 500,000 of what? Of debt. Do you understand? Do you understand, guys? I hope you're with me. Right? 15 shareholders, they invested 100,000. So this is the company value, the company that is in there. But now the company owes 2 million. And they tried to pay it with the company value money, but they couldn't finish the debt. But now, because they couldn't finish, they couldn't, now the legal authorities cannot go to the shareholders and ask them to pay the full amount. They'll have to wait for the company to raise that 500,000. So that this is what it means by limited liability. The owners are not personally responsible for the company's debts. They can only lose the money they invested. How much money did they invest? 100,000 each, which made up to 1.5 million. That's the money that they invested. That's the money that they will lose because they already put it in the company. All right. And then moving along, proprietary. Remember, PTY stands for propriety limited. So PTY Ltd means the business is a private company with limited liabilities. We explained here, separated. So here, they further explain that it shows that the business is privately owned. Proprietary. Proprietary means it's privately owned. Legally registered. Legally registered. The PTY, remember the CIPC. The CIPC will give them this two acronyms to show that this is a registered private company and it's protected by law and it's separate from its owner. So the company stands on itself. Apart from what? Apart from the owners. All right. So remember that limited liability. It separates the company from the owners or the shareholders in this case. Yes, it separates the company from the shareholders. All right. Okay, so as we move along, and then this will be the key characteristics slide. Let's move on quickly because we simply or we already defined or discussed the definition. So here we'll just go on quickly. Okay, the ownership, it's owned by 1 to 50 shareholders, private individuals or partners. Remember, a small group of people. Small group of people. Control is managed by directors. Remember, they're chosen by the shareholders who may or may not be shareholders. Okay, the shareholders can decide to be a director or may not decide to be a shareholders, but it's managed by directors who are chosen by the shareholders. Profits are shared among shareholders based on how many shares they own. So, for instance, if someone owns 50% and another person owns 20%, it clearly shows that this person will get 50% profit and this one will get 20% profit. So shared among shareholders based on how many shares they own, the percentage of their shares. Right? Liability again, as we come back here, separated. Remember, limited, it means separated. Liability. I feel like I'm going to tell you this but limited, separated. Okay, let's quickly just do that properly. Limited, separated. Okay, limited, separated. Shareholders are not personally responsible for the debts. Remember the investments. They'll rather lose the investment. They'll only lose the investment, right? And then capital can raise more capital by selling shares privately to where? To the private individuals or partners, not to the public. They may not sell their shares to the public, but they may sell it privately to a small group of people. All right. And then legal status, it's a separate legal entity. It means that, again, separate, limited, separate legal. The business is separate from the owners. So whatever laws that may come to the company, they will not affect the owners. All right? Separate, limited, right? The business is separate from the owners. And then continuity, a private company has continuity. It means that even if someone dies or they leave the company, the business will still operate, after the owner or the shareholder dies or leaves the company. And then the tax pays company tax on profits, not taxed on individuals. It means that it's taxed on the company. Taxed on the, okay, let's just quickly do this. Okay, taxed on the company. All right. So basically, that is your whole definition of what a private company is. All right. I hope you understood. And if you have more questions or if you have any questions, you can leave a comment in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. All right. And then as we move along, we go to our fourth form of ownership. Our fourth form of ownership, which is what? A public company. And remember this LTD, meaning what? Limited. Again, it appears so you get this abbreviation if you are registered company. Where do you register or with who do you register with? You register with the CIPC. So this acronym shows that this company is registered. It shows that the company is registered. Okay, so let's delve into the definition of a public company. So a public company, written as LTD, meaning limited liability, separated entity. So you got the whole idea of what limited means. It's a type of business that is owned by many shareholders and it is allowed to sell its shares to the public. Right? You can put it here. Private company can't sell to the public. Public company sells to the what? To the public. So that's the one of the differences between a private and a public company is that in a private company you can't sell, but in a public company, a business is allowed to sell its shares to the public on the stock exchange. Which stock exchange? Remember, I told you this is that we sell, or rather the company or public company sells its stock on the JSE, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Right? So they sell the shares on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So this means that a public company, or rather any person, can buy shares in the company and become a part. So when we talk about any person, remember when we were talking about a private company, only a group. Okay, let's do this properly. Okay, only a group of people are allowed to own. Only a group of people are allowed to own shares. Where? In a private company. In a private company, only a group of people. But in a public company, in a public company, anyone can own shares. All right? Anyone can own shares. Anyone can own shares. Why? Because a public company is listed. Where is it listed? On the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So the public company can sell their shares to what? To the public. So anyone can own shares because they sell their shares to the public. Where? On the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. All right? So remember those different types of definitions. So as we move along with the definition, according to the definition of entrepreneurship, when a business grows very large and it needs a lot of capital or money to expand, uh, now let's say, go back to the example of Mdu's Bakery, PT, PTY, Mdu's Bakery, PTY. It's a what? It's a public company. Remember this. No, no, no. Rather, okay, sorry for that. Sorry for that. It's not PTY. It's rather LTD. Yes, LTD. Don't confuse the two. Don't confuse the two. It's company LTD, not PTY. If it was a private company, it would have been what? Private company PTY Ltd. But because it's a public company, it's only Ltd. It's not privately owned. Remember, PTY stands for proprietary, which means privately owned. This one is not privately owned. It's a public company, meaning it's listed as for everyone. All right. So let's go back. It's not PTY, it's LTD. All right. Yes. Uh, so yes, we are here. So Mdu's Bakery, it's situated in, okay, let me just do this properly. It's situated where? In, in Sandton. Only one shop. But now what happens is that Mdu's Bakery, we want to do what? We want to expand the business. We want to expand the business. How do we expand the business? This is where now these people come in. This is where, according to the, okay, when a business grows very large and needs a lot of capital. Now, because we want to expand, we want to grow, what do we do? What do we do? We choose, okay, rather here, okay, it's not a, okay, let's do this. I want you to understand this before we go there. If we want to expand the business, what do we do? We sell to the public. To do what? To gain profit. So we sell our shares to gain profit so that we can expand. So that's the reason. So remember, we were only situated in Sandton, only one shop. But now we want to expand to other places. We sell our shares to them. So that's the reason why you would choose a public company as an entrepreneur. Okay, now let's go back to the to the definition. So I want you to understand how far. So according to the definition, when a business grows very large, it needs a lot of capital. Why do we need capital? To expand, right? To expand. We need capital to expand. Entrepreneurs may choose to register the business as a public company so that they will have the idea or the space to what? To expand. This allows them to raise money from thousands of investors. This is thousands of investors. How do they raise money from thousands of investors? How do we raise money? By selling to the public. We sell what? We sell shares. We sell shares. Shares. We sell shares of the business. Of the business. Do you understand? To the public. Let's go again and try to properly understand. So, according to the definition of entrepreneurship, remember into the whole definition. When a business grows very large and needs a lot of capital to expand. So, remember, why do we need to expand? We are situated in Sandton with only one shop. We only had one shop, but now we wanted to expand the business to other places. So how do we do that? Firstly, how do we expand? Firstly, what you do is that you register your business as a public company so that you can have the room to do what? To expand. You register your business as a public company. So now this allows the entrepreneur to raise money from thousands of investors. How do we raise money from thousands of investors? We sell our shares to the public. We sell our shares to the public so that we can raise money. So that we can to raise money. Money to do what? Money to expand the business. We raise money, or rather we sell our shares to the public to expand, to raise money so that we can expand. Sell shares to the public to raise money so that we can expand our public company. All right? Sell shares to the public, raise money to expand. I hope it's clear now. All right? I hope it's clear. So yes, as we go there, it allows them to raise money from thousands while still running the business to make profit. So while the business is still in operations, it's easy for the entrepreneur to keep on running the business while we grow. Remember, we don't want to close this one shop. We don't want to close this shop. We still want to keep on uh, running the business. But in essence, we want to expand. That's when now we sell our shares. All right? That's when we rather sell our shares. And then let's move on to the next. So a public company is a separate legal entity. Remember, I told you about limited, and separate. So limited is more like separate. So I'm not going to explain one thing more and over again. I explained to you limited is equals to separate. It means that the company is separated from the owners. Ne? So it says here, separate legal entity means it exists independently. So the company stands here and the shareholders stand here. These two don't interlink. Whatever legalities that happens with the company will not affect the owners. All right. This one stands on its own and this one stands on its own. So it exists independently from the people who own or manage it. Remember the directors. When we talk about your private company, we'll be talking about directors. All right. So it's separated from the company. So the shareholders are separated from the company. The shareholders have limited liability. Again, separate, limited, separate. Liability, it's debt, obviously. So I explained this in the previous video. So if you go and check there, you'll understand what I meant. Meaning they're only responsible for the amount that they invested. In the previous slide, rather I Okay, it's not this one, but rather this one. I explained it perfectly what it meant here. If you go back, you will see on this explanation I was actually explaining what it means to have limited liability, what it means for a company to have limited liability. So it means that they're only responsible for the amount of money they invested and their personal belongings are protected. So, like a private company, a public company also has separate legal entity and limited liability. All right. And then as we move on to the last part of the definition is that public companies are managed by board of directors. So in a private company, shareholders choose directors, but here it's rather more a group of people. So in a private company, they can be like one member. However, in a public company, there's more than one directors who are not not owning but rather managing or running the day-to-day operations of the company. So public companies are managed by board of directors who are elected by the shareholders. So just like in the private company, shareholders are the ones that elect the directors and the board of directors. So don't confuse the two. So in a private company, it's run by directors, can be one. But in a public company, okay, let's just do that. Okay. In a public company, it's run by board of directors, which are more than one director, ne? More than one. Don't confuse the two. It might be both directors, but these are the board of directors, meaning it's more than one. And in a private company, there can be one director. Ne? So these companies must also follow the strict legal and financial rules and report to the, again, as I said, with the private company, the directors are responsible for the legal obligations and the financial records, keeping records and reports so that they can show. So in this case, in a private company, they show all these to the CIPC. All right, the CIPC, and then in the board of directors in a public company, they'll show this to the public and the government. Because why the public? Because these are also shareholders. Remember, in a public company, shareholders, or rather the public can buy shares and they can become the shareholders. And also the government will also, in a sense of protecting the public. All right, so that's the whole definition of what a public company is. So let's move along to the characteristics of a public company. Again, we're going to move here fast because I think we already touched a lot of these things. Ownership, owned by many shareholders. So it can be thousands of shareholders. Why? Because the company is listed. So any member of the country can buy the shares. Controlled by a board of directors. Don't confuse it with the private company where it's controlled by directors. But here it's controlled by board of directors, also elected by the shareholders, just like the private company is elected by the shareholders. And then profits are shared among the shareholders in the form of dividends. So, okay, okay, let's dive in. What are dividends? So remember in a private, okay, rather, let's do this. Let's do this. Before we talk about dividends, let's talk about profit sharing of a private company, right? Profit sharing over what? A private company. Remember that in a private company, shares are owned by what? Shares are owned by a group, or rather a small group of people. So profit sharing will happen amongst these shareholders. So the shares, or rather the profit, will be shared amongst these because it's owned by a small group of people. Remember, in a private company, it's 1 to 50 shareholders. But now, when it comes to a private company, when it comes to rather a public company, when it comes to a public company, there are thousands, thousands of shareholders, thousands of shareholders. So the company cannot now share the profits, okay? Thousands of shareholders, right? The company now cannot share the profits just like what happens in a private company. So they share them in a form of what? Form of dividends. All right? So I want you to understand the two parts that in a private company, profit is shared among a small group of people, right? It's shared among a small group of people, 1 up to 50. So it's easy to sit down to call up you call up a, a, a shareholders meeting, rather to say, or every 6 months or every each year, annually, we will share profits amongst shareholders. And remember how they are shared according to the percentage, according to the shareholder percentage. Shareholder percentage. Now, when we come to a public company, there are thousands of shareholders within the company because of it's listed, it's a publicly listed company. So they share it in a form of what? Dividends. Now, what are dividends? Dividends are portions. So the company can't just give out large, let's see, let's just do this. The company can't give out large amounts of money at one time. So what they do is that they use a form that is called a dividend sharing, which now it means that dividends means giving portions of a company's profit to the shareholders. They give out portions. They give their shareholders money in portions, right? So they can be paid in one or two ways. One, they can be paid with money. So these portions will be in form of money or capital that is given to the shareholders. Or two, can be paid in the form of shares. So the shareholder will decide that I don't want money, but rather give me shares for my portions. All right. So again, as I said, these dividends will then be decided whether they must be paid, may be paid annually, annually, which is every year, quarterly, or within a semester. All right. So they can be paid annually within a year, or within 6 months, or within 3 months. All right. So now that's what profit sharing is. That's how now you share your profits within a public company in a form of dividends, giving portions of either money or shares to the public. And then as we move along, we talk about liability. As I said, limited means separated. The company and the owners or the shareholders are not part of the same uh, liable debt. So the company is separated from the shareholders. Shareholders are not personally responsible for debts. Only the company is. So the company is responsible for its own debt. All right? Company is responsible for its own debt. Let's just write it there. Company is responsible for its own debt. And then capital can raise large amounts of capital by selling shares to the public. As we said, if you are an entrepreneur and you want to change your business into a company, but you want to make it a public company, why? Because you want to upscale. As we said, well, okay, we did it in the previous slide whereby you just imagine you are a company situated in one place, but now you want to open many branches. But how do you then raise this particular capital? We raise this particular capital by selling the shares to the public. So we sell the shares to the public in order for us to do what? To raise money, to raise amount of capital so that we can upscale or have more businesses. And then when we talk about legal status, again, limited is the same as separated. Limited is the same as separate. So separate legal entity simply meaning limited. So a separate legal entity, the company is separate from the owners. So if let's say the company goes into a legal obligation, the shareholders or the owners of the company won't be responsible. And then just like a private company, it has continuity. Even if a member of a company dies or leaves the company continues to exist even if owners change or they pass away. And then last but not least, pays company tax on profits of the company, not of the owners. So the owners are not part of the company tax. It's not the same as a sole proprietor whereby the company will be taxed according to how much the owner makes. Here, the company will be taxed to how much the company makes, not the owners or the shareholders. So those are the key characteristics of a public company. All right. So as we move along here, it's just like a comparison of all the forms of ownership that we did. So if you look closely here, you can see, okay, rather let's do this so that you can see properly. Again, remember we have a sole trader, partnership. So we haven't done a closed corporation. We only did these four. We will go into a closed corporation, but rather a closed corporation, you can go into it when you reach Boma like grade 10, 11, and so forth. But here we just did a sole trader or sole proprietor. And then number two, we did a partnership. Number three, we talked about a private company. And then number four, which is the last one, we talked about a public company. So this, the number of owners within that particular form of ownership is listed here. So sole trader will be one person, partnership 2 to 20. Okay, we didn't do rather a closed corporation. So don't focus too much on a closed corporation. As I said, you do it as you go further in the stages of your schooling life. And then we did a private company, one or more shareholders, and then we did a public. So these are basically the summaries of the whole idea of the forms of ownership that we did. As I said, you must go back to the previous videos to find out what we were discussing if you get lost a bit. All right. So this is basically the summaries. So the form requirements, the legal statuses, liabilities, management and control, tax implications, continuity, and examples of what a sole trader or sole proprietor business might be. So that's the whole gist of it. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.